Welcome to the first look, and on my hand here is the Kinera Verdandi. Now, this is a loaner set from Jaben. They just loaned me for a few days to have a very quick impression. Now, this is also the first time I'm seeing it and the first time I'm hearing it, so I'm excited to tell you what I feel about this. Now, this is a 6-driver IEM costing about 1,200 USD or about 1,600 to 1,700 Sing dollars, and it's a combination of 4 type of drivers, which is a bone conductor, a DD, a EST, and a BA, forming 6 drivers, 2 BAs and 2 ESTs in this particular IEM. Very interesting combination, and I'm excited to try out. I mean, this is not as high-end as, say, the Noble Onyx, which costs twice the price, more than twice the price in fact, or the Loki, which costs also twice the price plus. But, you know, the combination is quite similar, and it's all down to the tuning and, of course, what they do with the IEM. So this is the Verdandi. This is a very new IEM. Obviously, this is not the original packaging. So let's take a look at the IEMs. Now, I have to say the shell looks really beautiful. This is a nice colored shell. It's also very 3D looking. I mean, you probably can't see in a video, but the words and everything, plus the patterns actually have some sort of physical layer and depth. So it's quite interesting to look at. Very nice IEM. This looks like a resin molded or custard type of IEM. All the things are inside. You can see the various drivers. Now, I'm not sure whether these are the original tips. That's for sure. I'm not sure of that. But I believe this is the original wire, and it's a balanced wire, blue color, which kind of fits the whole team Verdandi itself. Now, the tips themselves, let's see. This is a relatively big nozzle. Not the biggest that I've seen, and there is 3 separate holes on the nozzle itself. So I don't think it's very hard to find tips that fit on it. It's not too huge that you cannot find a tip. And I did notice that the tip do extend a bit. So recently I've been playing a lot of IEMs, and the extension of the tip do matter. Some ear tips cannot be used with short nozzles. Some can. And the shape of it also determines how deep it can go, which affects the sound signature quite significantly. But I will use what's given. You know, that's the most fair way, because if I was to use my own tips, I will start rolling and it will change the sound signature quite significantly. So I'll just leave it as it is. So this is the Verdandi itself. I'm very excited. Let's have a very quick listen. 2 songs as usual with my first look, followed by a comparison. Now, this is a 1,200 USD IEM. I don't really have anything that is at this price range, so I will only compare with the U12T, which is at 2,000 USD. It is significantly more, but that's the closest I have for the comparison. So without wasting time, let's set ourselves up for the initial listen, and then followed by the comparison, and I can give you guys a sound summary of this particular IEM. For the first impression of the Verdandi using backlight replica from Vonde, firstly, for male vocals, it sounds really good. There is quite a lot of body, quite a lot of power in the sound itself, for the vocals at least. Now, for the bass itself, it's very punchy. I don't feel like there's a lot of sub bass. There is some, but not a lot. But you know, the quantity is very iffy. It depends on the comparison. But for this particular song, it's very punchy. Yeah, I don't feel like there's that much sub bass itself. Something that I will have to look out when I compare later with the U12T to see what's the difference. I mean, U12T is actually quite bassy, a lot of sub bass, but a little bit less on the bass impact itself. And then when it comes to the mids instrument, I think it's really nice, very clear. In backlight, there is quite a lot of guitars playing, electric guitars, and you can hear it quite cleanly. There's a lot of the energy in those guitars. I did notice that the clarity is not very, very good for the mids, not the best that I've heard, because there's actually this very soft electric guitar shredding behind that I did notice in certain IEMs and not in some. And in this case, this is one of the IEMs that are very, very elusive. I mean, if I focus like crazy, I can actually hear it. But no, on general, if you were just glossing over, you probably can't hear that particular electric guitar that's shredding behind. It's a very soft but distinct guitar itself. So the absolute clarity, not the best. The absolute separation, also not the best for this particular IEM. I mean, this is not like top-end $4,000 or $3,000 IEM, so I do expect certain amount of performance, and this is quite aligned. I mean, I have tried lesser IEMs that can't even hear it at all. So great. And then for the highs themselves, I think it's quite clean. The cymbals are very natural sounding, doesn't feel too hot to me. In fact, it's quite enjoyable overall, the sound signature. I think this is one of the generally enjoyable sound signature that I can live with without much issues. Now, of course, this is just backlight replica. So now I will hear a pure vocal one, Aino Akuruhi. This is pure vocal from Edo, and I'm excited. Now, for Aino Akuruhi, it highlights a few things. Firstly, for vocals, this is more of the neutral style vocals. I noticed that there's not much like warmness or body and stuff. You can feel it. It's a bit more on the neutral stuff, not too strong, not too light kind of style, and not much bias to either the bright or the warm side. So neutral sounding IM. Soundstage-wise, it's a middling type of sound. The sound is generally big enough that it's just not stuck inside the head itself, but it's not very huge until the sound actually goes out of my head. So somewhere in the middle for soundstage. And then for treble, a lot of the instruments that are more of the higher pitch in this particular song itself is quite well rendered and very natural. I like how it's so natural for those instruments. Never too hot, never too spicy, just quite natural throughout there. And then the bass, I would say there's some sub-bass and bass, and it's quite well rendered, very balanced. Overall, I think this is a very balanced sounding IM. Now, Aino Akuruhi could always be rendered in two ways, and one is the very fragile style, and one is more of the smooth style itself, which is more calming but smooth, not the very fragile sounding. Now, for this particular IM, it actually renders them in the smooth and calming style, but this is not the most calming style that I heard, so it is not like really utterly buttery type of sound, but it's okay. It's still pretty smooth and nice and very calming in nature to listen. I do prefer this particular track to be rendered in more of the fragile sound because it feels like it's going to break anytime and it fits the mood of it, but this IM do not render it as such. Now, I do say that when the chorus comes in, this kicks up a lot of power in the mid. It feels powerful, it feels forward. So this is type of IM that if you are listening to high powered song like just now Backlight, it is pretty good. It is powerful sounding for the mid itself, which means it's a slightly forward yet still not like stuck in your head type. A bit dispersed but very forward and really energetic type of sound. Now I'm going to try comparing with the U12T now, and the next song I will try out is Ibarra. Now, when it comes to the comparison between the Verdandi and the U12T, the Verdandi does hold itself very well when it comes to the soundstage. It is slightly bigger in soundstage, sounds a little bit more spread out and nice. The U12T is very energetic but stuck in the middle a little bit. Now, when it comes to the vocals, I think there's quite distinct difference. Now, the U12T is a bit more bodied and a little bit more full of sound and very, very powerful. While the Verdandi, as I said just now, is powerful, but it's not that full of a sound itself, so it feels a lot lighter than the U12T when it comes to the main mids itself, when it comes to the general rendering, especially on Ibarra. The Edo's vocals are just not as thick as the U12T version, but it's a bit more lighter and pushing forward, but no, U12T just slaps your face with the vocals themselves. It's just, that's the difference. Now, for the highs, it's quite clear. I mean, just now I already said the highs are there, it's distinct, but it's not like very well emphasized in this particular song. The U12T do emphasize the high. But to be fair, U12T is a very sizzling, sparkly IM at times to me, while the Verdandi is a little more calming, a bit more, I'll say, as if you're looking for a non-fatigue experience, I think the Verdandi probably can give you a little bit better experience in this. But it does mean that if you are looking for excitement and your excitement lies in the high regions, the Verdandi will not give you the same amount of excitement as the U12T for this particular track. Now, then we look at the bass. Now, I did notice the difference in bass rendering. The U12T definitely have more bass, and it renders the bass in a very full way, where there's the punch and then the spread. Of course, it does feel a bit more bouncy, a bit more big. Some people can say it's bloated, but to me it's not really bloated. It's just that the sub bass do kick in and stuff, so it's a bit more rounded off for the bass itself. But there is quality and good enough quality to me for enjoyment. The Verdandi has a lot of impact, and its impact is very clean, but the sub bass is just not as prominent and doesn't feel as much really. And the quantity of the bass is just slightly lesser than the U12T. So if you do swap between them, when you go from the U12T to the Verdandi, it feels like the bass reduces quite a little bit, you know. But if you just hear from the Verdandi first and then the U12T, I feel that, you know, the Verdandi feels a little bit more balanced. The U12T becomes very, very bassy. So it depends on which you listen first and how you acclimatize your ears to them. But The Verdandi overall I feel is a more balanced sound, not too much emphasis on the lows and the highs, while the U12T is like really a bit more V-shaped to me than the Verdandi significantly. In fact, not a little bit more, significantly more V-shaped than the Verdandi. Now that is Ibarra, which is a little bit more on the aggressive sound type. Now let's go for something a little more soothing. I want to try really to push the general sound signature throughout the entire spectrum. So I will go for soundtrack, and then the Witch from Mercury is probably my choice. I'll start from the middle, around 2 minutes plus 3 minutes style, and then let's have a listen. Okay, now that I heard the Witch from Mercury using both of these, it is very similar to just now. The Verdandi just sounds bigger, and also the U12Ts just sound like it's more body, more bass, more highs. But I did notice something a bit different now. In Witch from Mercury, you can render in a few ways, very atmospheric or very clean and clear throughout the entire spectrum. For the U12T, it's a bit more like atmospheric style, where it's a bit more bodied throughout the entire track. While for the Verdandi, it's a little bit more like, there is places that is emphasized. And the places that emphasize is the mid bass and the upper mids for the vocal regions, and then a little bit on the highs where they talk about the distinctness in the instrument kind of thing. So it's not like it is perfectly lifted throughout the entire song itself. It's just like there's some emphasis here and there. And this emphasis makes for a very interesting effect, because at certain part of the chorus, there's vocals that come in that, just kind of like a chorus that sings as a background tune. I don't know how to describe it. But on a Verdandi, it feels like very extended and far away, and a little bit more on the neutral bright side. While for the U12T, that part feels a little bit more like melded in the music, a bit more, little bit more bodied style, but not so extended in sound, not so bright. And if you ask me, the rendering wise, I agree with the Verdandi a little bit more for that particular rendering, where the vocals are a bit further away, a bit more neutral bright, a bit more extended upwards. It feels a bit more correct in this particular track, where somebody like sitting in a mountain and just chanting or singing a chorus away is quite interesting effect. And I think the Verdandi does it a little bit better there. Everything else kind of holds like what I said in the earlier track, where the body of the U12T is a bit more, the bass a bit more, treble a bit more, overall technicality, the U12T is a bit better, but the Verdandi do hold itself, especially in the upper mids, and the bass impact itself, it does hold itself there, and of course the sound stage. And the air in the sound for the vocals is also a little bit better on the Verdandi. The U12T vocals just feel a little bit more rounded off for the parts where there is actually vocals for this particular track. So overall, which do I enjoy more? For Witch from Mercury, I do not know. I like the atmosphere here, but I do like the vocals here. The extension, the more focus on the mid-highs is a little bit nicer on the Verdandi. But I think you can't get both, because it's about frequencies, and I don't think you can mix both of them together. It's just not so trivial. Both of them are pretty equally good for this particular track. Unlike Ibarra, I do think U12T is a little bit better on that. So that's really about it. This is my initial look of the Verdandi. The Verdandi is actually very competent of IEM. I have compared many IEMs with the U12T. I think the U12T is just spectacular in many ways, except for soundstage. It doesn't feel very wide at times, but for the bass, for the vocals, the U12T is really good. But the Verdandi kind of holds itself, especially when it comes to soundstage. And then when it comes to the vocals, it has a different rendering, which is a bit more extended into the mid-highs and also the upper air region. It's really nice on the Verdandi for those. Now, when I was hearing it stand alone, I think it is fantastic for Aino Akuruhi, and on backlight is actually very balanced and also very good to listen. Not the most exciting sound, but definitely good for male vocals, for female vocals, for multiple instruments playing together. Just that the highs himself, I think, is not very emphasized in this particular IEM. Now, this IEM will be probably what I think a mild V type of IEM. So don't expect too much bass, don't expect too much highs, a bit more balance, and the balance is towards the neutral bright style for especially the vocals themselves. So overall, I think it's a very enjoyable one, especially for female vocals. If you want it to be more clear, more airy, I think Verdandi will probably give you that. And then I don't have much to say. It is a very nice to use IEM. I don't have much complaints in its quality. I think that if you are into the style of sound that the Verdandi is trying to give you, it probably work out well. Now, this is one of the many bone conductor IEMs I have tried, and I noticed that every of them sounds very different. So obviously configuration means nothing. It's all about tuning, and the Verdandi does tune it quite differently. For people who want a bit more balance, I think the Verdandi can give you that. That's about it for today. I hope you enjoyed this short little review of the Verdandi. This is the first look, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.